Hello and welcome to Lockbox Files, the entirely 100% devoted to Lockbox podcast.
We're not doing that today.
Oh, hi wee wee, I didn't think you were here. I'm gonna go over here and think about what I've done. Hello and welcome to Foundry Files, the entirely devoted to the Foundry podcast thing, not about lockboxes. I'm Admiral Murphy, that's Wee Wee. He'll tell you what we're doing this week because it's so much more exciting than lockboxes. Go ahead, Wee Wee.
What have you been taking?
Sugar. That's been my excuse all week. Anyway, what are we doing this week?
Anyway, folks. We're not going to let Murphy tell you, because I'm going to. We have a bunch of news which concerns a recent patch, which I'm sure all of you will be familiar with by now. The taking away of the fleet marks from the Foundry Daily, and actually taking away the Foundry Daily altogether. We'll cover that more in detail in news. We have a few quick tips today. Foundry Limitations. Finish off the technical section. And then we move into gameplay next week. And then we have a review, Avenging Resolution, Part 2 of Finding Resolution from last week. And I have to say, that mission was brilliant.
Oh my god, tune into it. Yep, tune into that because it's a new, awesome mission. We'll tell you where that ranks now overall because it is, like, amazing. But anyway, let's roll into news on this week's episode. Foundry File 17! Of the podcast thing. Just go. Me cut this quick before we're screwed. Quick, go to the Lockbox podcast!
And on to the news.
Bam! Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I had to.
Now, we're going to talk about like I said, an issue that everybody knows about. The removal of the fleet marks and the entire daily altogether. And the way the reward system in the Foundry now works.
Can I just throw in? It's the continuation of the Foundry Cold War. Because we totally know it's a real war. We had a couple comments, though, on our last episode. People like, oh, this is a war and stuff. I'm still going to say it's a Cold War. Nothing's happening. Sorry. I don't think it's a war. I think it's just
It's just a bit of bantering back and forward. The grinders are blaming the actual Foundry authors for taking this.
Which did happen here. Yeah.
And the Foundry authors are blaming the grinders for this occurring in the first place. But the gist of it is, the daily mission has been completely removed.
You didn't predict
wrong from last
I
week.
told them when this happened.
Not gonna take the daily away at all.
Yep.
They did exactly that.
I'm actually quite shocked they responded this quick too, because it was only a week. They were like, it was like Wednesday or Thursday. This happened. I was like, oh, they actually did something this quick. That's wow. Okay. Well, I guess we got to cover this issue again on the show, because I didn't think we were gonna cover it for at least a week or two. Not a week or two, like a couple weeks out. But
yeah. Now, if you're wondering what kind of qualifications, or rather awards, from qualified missions, Foundry missions there are, all qualifying Foundry missions will automatically reward a scaling amount of dilithium and skill points / expertise. So basically what that means is the longer the mission, the more rewards you get. The
Which
shorter
makes
the mission,
sense.
The less rewards you get. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's the problem. The Foundry grinders, essentially, don't like that. Because before there was a set amount of daily, you could play literally a quickie mission for 2 seconds and you'd get the same reward as if you played an hour-long mission. This, if you play too quickly mission, that was actually resolved in Season 7, that doesn't count anymore, but if you played like a 5-minute, 10-minute shootout between battleships for 10 minutes, that would count. but you would get barely any rewards for it, and then as if you had, say, like an hour-long mission, you get a full scale. And actually, I've played a couple of missions which are about an hour long, 45 minutes long, and I was getting the same reward as was before the Foundry Daily changed in Season 7, 1440 lithium. So it appears to come back up there, but I don't think it's resolved the issue entirely.
No.
Because the grinders can easily... There's nothing to stop the grinders from easily just playing those grinding missions still. Granted, it'll get them a hell of a lot of rewards now, but there's no reason why they can't do it still.
Yeah, and we're still seeing grind missions up there on the list. Now, Wee told me to wait, so we're gonna wait to see what happens with the list. But I don't get the only reason I see people hating on this new system of where a mission's longer, you get more rewards, because look at that, it makes total sense. If you're spending more time doing something, you should be getting more rewards for doing that. I don't get why people are being pissed off at this unless it's like, oh, I can't get my rewards as easily now. Sorry. I don't know what to say to you, but this is how I think it has to work in order for longer missions to be played. And still, short missions work, it's just they're not giving the ridiculous amount of rewards that you would get normally for doing a long mission. This is kind of what we're seeing in the Neverrun rewards, and it's starting to come over here.
There is a little extra in this system. Once every 24 hours, the first Spotlight mission completed in that time frame will get a bonus 1440 dilithium.
Nice.
A bonus 1440 dilithium.
On top of what you normally get. That's pretty good.
What you would normally get. So potentially, an hour-long reward can get you 1440 dilithium plus the bonus you would get. So that's essentially 2880 dilithium for playing that Spotlight Foundry mission.
That's much better than
That's actually a great idea in this reward system because it promotes those Spotlight missions who have been spotlighted and highlighted by the devs for people to play.
Yeah, and Cryptic's sure that they want people playing that because Brandflake plays through all of them each time he spotlights one. So he knows, oh, okay, this deserves that extra reward because it's not going to be some exploit grind or whatever.
There is a little extra which we haven't seen before in the Foundry in terms of rewards. That is a scaling amount of energy credits based on the player's level as a reward as well. Now, we haven't seen that before.
Yeah, it used to be fleet marks.
If you're a high level, you get more energy credits than as if you were, say, like a level 18 Lieutenant Commander or something. Mm-hmm. So you get more ECs higher up, and since everybody's higher up anyway, that really doesn't make any difference really now, does it? But
everybody has
it's
VA.
a great way to get out ECs now by playing Foundry missions. There are multiple ways to do it. You've got a bit of dilithium there, and you've got a bit of ECs there. It's a good idea. The problem is this Cold War that's been dubbing, it's still going on, and it's quite understandable why, because nothing's really been resolved yet. It's just been put to one side.
No, here's what I see this was done for, and this is speculation, because still, this isn't Cryptic saying we approve or disapprove of grind missions, but through this action, it kind of looks like they are disapproving of grind missions, at least in my opinion. But still, if they do disapprove of grind missions, this isn't like the right way to do it. I guess this is the way of saying it, because it really still doesn't fix the issue. We'll see if like grind missions start going down, but still, yeah, you could still do a complete grind mission and get the rewards, which I don't know. That's it, I think the debate's still going to go on. Now, another major point that was of debate around this item that I guess we haven't really touched on yet was fleet marks were completely removed from this, and I think that's brought apart the most rage on this because a lot of people use the system to get fleet marks for their starbase.
Yeah, and now to put it in perspective. The smaller fleets, the midish fleets, will probably be complaining the most because they the ones who relied on little sources to get them easily instead of things like colony invasion, starbase incursion, fleet alert, all that kind of stuff. That's where you would expect to get them. The Foundry Daily also rewarded that as of I think it was September when it was put in. But with this fleet mark removal, it's no longer as easy to get 50 fleet marks for those smaller fleets, and what that essentially means is smaller Fed fleets have already begun to decline, essentially disband as well, and Klingon fleets will actually small fleets will probably feel the worst effect because not as many people play Klingons.
Yeah.
I think it was like 20% was the number provided or something.
Yeah, it's pretty low.
Plus the 5 or 6 people who would actually be in that small fleet. So Klingon fleets have probably already been essentially disbanding and going into the black hole of nothingness with all of this. So effectively, it really, people have been complaining it screws over small and mid-ish fleets, and I can see why.
Especially
people have relied this on for about 6 months now.
Yeah, especially if people were legitimately using the system to get their fleet marks out of this, because there are those people who will not do the exploits where you can go AFK and stuff. But there are probably people like myself who would play normal Foundry missions where I'd get my fleet marks and I'd be like, hey, I got fleet marks, sweet. But now they were just completely taken out. And I think I do have an issue with that. I don't think that was the right fix to do. Obviously that is just their quick knee-jerk reaction to try to make it like less exploity, because a lot of the exploit missions out there were created because this is on top of that reward. So you're already getting, we said before, you're getting the 3 resources that you really need in this game through the Foundry. Now one of those is out. So, but I don't know. Daniel Stahl came out with a whole big post. I didn't read all of it, but I read most of it to get that. It seemed like they wanted to work more on the reward system so that they could have a proper one in the next couple of months, so maybe Season 8. But for now, they're taking fleet marks out completely, but there is the chance they'll put them back in once they figure out how to exactly make them work with the Foundry. So we'll see what happens there. There is the possibility that they will be returned, but as of right now, they're completely out.
I've noticed several comments by, I think it's Brandon, saying that, well, basically that the fleet marks were supposed to be a temporary assignment to the Foundry Daily. Now, what happened in August and September is essentially they were put in for that week, if you guys remember, for the 50 fleet marks, that fleet mark week where you gained extra bonuses, a really nice week, by the way. Then they put them in permanently in September. And it wasn't listed in any patch notes. It wasn't listed in any updates or any announcements. It was noticed by a player and then posted on the sewers. And then everybody else noticed it as well. And then people started using it since. So essentially what happened is that there is no post to essentially say this was put in temporarily. It was put in permanently without any sort of letting the people know or anything. So it's that kind of a thing that people feel that they've been screwed over essentially by this Foundry Daily because of that reason. And it's one of those things that essentially is like, why can't we just put the fleet marks as a scaling award in this thing, in this situation? And I've noticed a couple of devs as well saying that, well, basically it's the fleet marks are for missions and assignments that fleets and groups essentially go through, and the Foundry can be one of them if you go through the group, but it's not entirely focused around it. And things like colony invasion and incursion, those are the kind of things that reward fleet marks for that reason. And it's a bit of a difficult situation I think the devs have found themselves in. Now that's not saying I'm blaming them, I'm just saying that this is what happened, and you can probably see why the community is really feeling a bit ugh about this.
Yeah. And plus, the community hates anytime anything's changed. Look at the past in the game when they've like nerfed something or just changed the way something works. Everybody goes, "Oh, you changed it. You can't change it." Well, they can. It's an MMO. Stuff changes. I do feel like this is a good change. I know there's a lot of rage going on where people are like, "Oh, this is it. I'm not playing the Foundry anymore." Blah, desk flip. But I've also seen a few posts where it's like, "Oh, I'm going to start playing the Foundry now because I like the way this reward system is done. This is what's going to get me back into it." I saw a few posts that said that too. So, and I do think this is a good change. I think this is just a good change overall for the Foundry. I don't think this is like a change that's going to really affect the exploit missions and the grind missions. We'll have to wait and see what they're going to do for that, whether they're going to actually be able to stomp exploit type missions out there, because there's still ways to do that, and I have a feeling we're going to see a few more exploits if it's not stomped, because right now we don't really notice them. But
yeah, we'll get back to you in a couple of weeks and let you know how the grind missions are in relation to the actual Foundry missions, because it's only been a couple of days since the patch came out. So we're going to wait a couple more weeks, and in that time we're going to cover this again, and then we're going to see, has this made a difference or has this not done anything at all? So we'll let you know then. But in the meantime, because of this Foundry update, missions have been also republished because of the update, and the Foundry is temporarily offline for about a day or two. This actually occurs pretty much every time the Foundry has an update, and for those of you who are around for it, Season 4 is the reason for that.
Yeah, I loved Season 4.
I won't go into detail because I'm sure you guys remember that.
Don't get me started. Season 4 hurt me.
Essentially, it's a good idea to just take the Foundry offline temporarily, make sure everything's fixed first, and auto-republish all the missions. Good idea.
Yep.
And it works.
Yeah, the only thing we're covering this for, because it's already done and dusted, but a few missions have not been auto-republished. Like, I went into I have 35 missions out there. About half of them did not auto-republish, and I'm kind of upset because I had to go back last time and manually republish half of them before, and that wasn't that long ago. So now I have to again go back and republish them again. So go and check your missions, make sure they're all up, because you might have one or two that aren't up, especially if you're a Foundry series author like myself, because you might have a few parts missing. That's going to screw up your player's playthrough of your entire series. So go and check that out. But hey, this is something we didn't cover last week because it was just starting as we were recording or something like that weekend. But the Neverwinter beta, it kicked up actually. People are getting into it. Probably the reason we didn't cover it is because we're not in the beta. You're not in the beta, right? You're in Marvel beta. So, but I checked. I'm not in the beta. I was in the alpha. I'm not in the beta though. So my alpha only let me play with the Foundry, but we're not able to play a game. But if we get into beta, we'll be playing that and checking it out for sure at least. Don't know if we'll actually still be playing it though when it actually comes out, but we do want to at least check it out because hey, it's going to be the future of Stowe's Foundry most likely. We're going to see how it's integrated over there, how rewards are working and stuff like that, because they have multiple times in the past quoted this stuff is going to come to Stowe eventually. We've just been waiting for Neverwinter to actually release. So, hey, it's in the beta stage now, close to actually releasing and closer to us getting those Foundry coolness, stuffy, cool thing, niceness. I don't know even what I want to call it now because it's awesome. Don't give me that look.
Are you having trouble with your words again?
I am. Last week I was terrible with my words, but hey, we'll let Wee deal with words and quick tips.
And on to our quick tips for today. We have Foundry Limitations. This will be resolving the technical side of things before we move into gameplay next week. Now, Foundry Limitations pretty much speak for themselves. Every author faces technical difficulties and limitations in the Foundry tool. It's a good idea to try and avoid them or create some kind of workaround. Now, this depends entirely on what the problem is, whether it could be like, for example, allied groups. Like you're a Fed player, if you want Klingons on your side or Romulans on your side, you're going to have to reskin them from Fed groups. You can't put Romulan or Klingon groups on your side. So just reskinning the group is a workaround. But that kind of Foundry limitation, it does impact some missions, because for example you could have like a warbird or a vulture that spews out a tachyon detection grid or something ridiculous like that. They don't have that yet, by the way. Or you could have like NPCs moving or changing animation for some reason. That's a Foundry limitation. I mean, there is a workaround now that you could have the NPC contacts like getting removed from the actual mission themselves. It's a very good thing. I approve. But before, you couldn't do that at all, and you couldn't change the animation of that NPC. Now it's a bit of a workaround where you could remove that NPC contact and spawn the same one but with a different animation. That kind of a thing is a good workaround. I really actually suggest that of anyone planning to update the mission with that change, make it retroactive. Using out-of-character dialogue for situations used to be really the only solutions. Like, this person is doing this now, instead of actually showing it physically in the map. It used to be a clear way of letting someone know what was going on within a mission when you were unable to show the scene using the tech in the Foundry. But like I said, that's all right now, so go with it, guys. Make all of this happen.
And welcome to Mission Reviews. If you don't know what we do here, that's surprising because we've been doing it even before Foundry Files existed as its own podcast. But anyway, we're going to be reviewing Avenging Resolution, the second part of AJ Stoner's series of Resolution, I guess, is the best way to sum it up. But anyway, this part, the second part, has 693 plays, an average star rating of 4.55, about 90-minute gameplay window, and it's part 2 of the series, as I mentioned before. So, oh my god, I love this mission. I'm just going to say that a while, so I'm kind of spoiling our overall feel of this, but I love it. But let's go into story right now. Teaming up with an old enemy from Part 1. It's up to you to discover the plot of a hidden enemy who seeks to destroy both the Federation and the Cleon Empires. Alrighty, this is something that's awesome for a second part, whereas the enemy from Part 1, you have to team up for mutual interest in Part 2. And I know Wee loved that. He basically orgasmed over that whole fact when we get into characters.
I wouldn't quite describe it that way.
Oh, okay. But anyway, the plot in this mission is great, with many unexpected twists or turns. I mean, in Part 1 I said, oh, I expected this twist or turn. No, in this one, I did not expect many of the twists or turns that came up in this mission. And that will keep your interest greatly in the mission. Especially because there's a lot of dialogue boxes, and that can kind of get on some players' nerves. But the plot totally brings you back in when you go like, wait, what? That's awesome to see. Now, an interesting thing I want to throw in is, in Part 1, you face one of the Cleon ships, but it's not a Cleon ship, it's a reskinned enemy ship. So if you've noticed that during your playthrough, this kind of hints at who the enemy is in this part. We don't want to say who that enemy is, but I didn't notice that. Wee picked it up, though, and it's like, oh, dude, did you pick this up? It's, like, amazing. I was like, that's brilliant. Because, you know what, that just seems like either he just reskinned a ship at first. That's like amazing Easter egg. Like, you don't think that of anything of that, because so many authors reskin ships, so most Foundry players get used to it. It's like, oh, they just reskinned a ship. But then you think about it, why did they reskin that ship? And it fits with the story, and it's brilliant. I love it. So that was amazing there. The characters are great, and some of them, like the enemy from the first mission, make their comeback in this one. And there's a bit of evolution to that, especially because the Cleon enemy now is your ally in this, and you're working together. You don't have to like him. In fact, there's dialogue options where you can specifically say, I still don't like you at the end. But hey, you're working together now, and that's really cool to see, and you really like that character progression. So,
yeah. Well, basically, this Klingon will be accompanying you through this mission. And I noticed a couple of points when he's running through you on some of the ground portions that basically he gets frustrated at some equipment for various story reasons. Yeah, and in the dialogue it explains that he's so frustrated he begins smashing the equipment and wrecking everything around in the room because he's so frustrated and passionate about what's happened.
A perfect example.
This is the kind of dimension a character really needs in a good mission. That together with the dialogue, really presents this as a great character.
And that's a perfect example of what we just talked about in quick tips. Because you couldn't have him run around the room and smash all the equipment, you had to use the out-of-character dialogue stuff. So, bam! Being used in missions right now. But anyway, the dialogue in this mission is very well written, especially with some of the responses you can give. Like, I took the totally sarcastic approach to dealing with this Cleon. Like, he's like, today is a good day to die. I go, you always say that. Or you can be really serious in your response with him. And so that was fun to see. There are a few points where he puts words into your captain's mouth. Of course, that always happens, but you usually want to keep that pretty generic, and he does a pretty good job of that. There is one point I could see in this mission where it kind of can get on some players' nerves, where it's like a whole page dialogue. And I could see a captain going, that doesn't fit me. I didn't really notice that with mine. It wasn't like extremely annoying me, but I could see with other captains where it's like, I don't like that. It's also a pretty wordy mission when you're going into it. So do have that in mind. You're going to be reading a lot of dialogue boxes back to back to back. So do keep that in mind as you're playing through it, which this can lead to longer playtime depending on how fast you read. So keep that in mind. There are no canon contradictions in this mission, except for a little debate me and Wee had over this. So there's like a point where Stowe canon kind of conflicts with the canon he's hinting at. So basically the enemy you're taking on was pissed off by another enemy. But in Stowe they kind of say, no, it's this enemy who pissed them off. You can kind of read into that. I don't want to say what exactly is going on here because it is a bit of story spoiler. But we had a debate on whether or not he's forgetting the Stowe canon, in fact. So I'm sorry I can't say more on it. I know it's confusing, but we don't want to spoil it. The touchstoning was okay in this mission. It does touchstone on some stuff, but it's not like direct plot integrated stuff. So like Jim Pox mentioned a bit in this and how he's running the Empire and stuff, but it's not really tying into what's going on in this mission exactly. Like you're not directly involved in it. So And then there's no grammar and spelling issues. There's one point though you want to check. It's like you had a weird space where you jump in the middle of a line down to another line. And it's just you just want to check it out. But other than that, no spelling and no grammar issues. Story scored an 8.72, our 9th ranked in story. So again, a really great story mission here. In fact, it's now in the top 10. So really good. And I can definitely see why people who love story would love this mission and why it's really high up there on the 5-star rating system. So pretty good there. Technical now. Oh my god, Wee Wee. Can you tell us what we thought about these maps? Because I'm lost at words for this.
Well, essentially, these are brilliant maps. They are consistent, they are well customized, and they just look completely new in some occasions.
Yeah.
Now, it's not to the scale of that we've seen in a couple of missions, where they literally are completely new from scratch. This is using base maps.
Yeah.
Well, not as in like an actual base, as in like a base is like a map to use to put stuff on.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing. That's what's happened, but the way it's customized makes it look completely new. So it's not to the scale of something they've seen before, but it's close, and it's very, very well done.
And it happens quite frequently. Like, and this will come into creativity a little bit later, but you go into a lot of these maps and you're like, whoa, this is cool, because a lot of them are customized pretty well that you don't recognize them, or they are like completely made like off the ground or whatever. I think a few are made like that. But again, it's not like, I guess the best map building we've seen is City of the Palmar Reed, where Almec just was like, I'm just going to build this thing, you won't even recognize it because it's completely off the ground, I'm building floors, walls, everything from scratch. This gets pretty close though, because a lot of this is really cool. So if you like seeing technical stuff like that, already, maps, thumbs up, check these out because they're awesome. Good transitions. Each time you hit a map load, you feel like you're good. You feel good about it because it's like, okay, I have to transition here, and they're not frequent. Like, you do a lot on each map so that they're spread out. So it's really good to see that compared to where you don't do much on a map. Plus, he also does avoid map transitions by when you're on your ship, you don't actually go to your ready room. It hints at you're in your ready room for this, which I do like seeing. Because usually an author will have you beam into your ready room, deal with that, and then go back to your ship, which, again, that's 2 loads right there. This avoids that. And I think he kind of has to avoid it too because he does use a lot of maps, and you have that 10 map limit there. The author showed great knowledge of the Foundry tool because of his amazing map building. There were no Foundry issues I really saw here. A few limitations, which we'll get into. And then some awesome effects. There's like a cool little like gateway effect thing. Not Iconian, something else. But it's really cool. And I loved seeing that. Especially when it starts like having enemies spawn. That was cool to see. Perfect art asset usage because he does a great job of building these maps. One I want to point out was, you remember seeing Wee Wee the when you go into the bar, you've got the Orion dancers like towards the ceiling. They're hanging on the Borg. What is that? A Borg node or something like that? It's Borg tech.
Yes, Borg node, yeah.
That's cool to see. Like, you walk in and immediately you're looking up. And that's always awesome when you have to look like up or down at something in a mission, because usually you're just looking around, but you're looking everywhere in this to see the cool little, nice little art assets he's put in to kind of make these new things up, like the dancing podiums. Many wow moments in this mission. Do you want to tell us, Wee Wee, what some of these wow moments were? Because, oh, wow, brilliant.
Well, most of it revolves around something we mentioned earlier, which is the maps. Very consistent, very well done, and they look completely new. A lot more of it actually stems into both of the other story and gameplay aspects of this mission. So we have different story elements that nobody expects. I mean, for example, this story goes in a completely left direction where I expected this to be.
Yeah,
usually,
same.
I found that part 2, or at least multiple parts, usually essentially are not really the same, but they are different, but essentially they have the same basic idea as part 1. This is a completely independent mission, but just happens to have the same characters as part 1. That's essentially what it is, and it's brilliant for that because there are little hints that we've mentioned earlier in part 1 as well, and more into gameplay as well, which I'll mention later on. Some of the combat is brilliant, but I'll mention that later.
Then the instructions were really good in this mission. He even puts like a little creative spin. You mentioned this. What was like some of the creative spins he put on this? Because I know he like reworded it so that you still knew what you were doing, but it wasn't like a boring go kill this here.
Yeah, essentially what happened is that we've seen a couple of missions where it doesn't tell you where to go, and it's just like a summary of the missions. Like, actions speak louder than words, or something ridiculous like that. When you're about to attack, and we've seen others that basically say, do this, go here, we have to interact with this, do that. This does both. This, I think, is in between. It gives a summary and tells you what to do. It's like, begin the attack, for example, is one of the objectives in this mission, and it's essentially in between. I noticed that throughout the mission, and I think it's a great idea to try and find a balance between that, because it's not boring, but it's not too vague either.
The most important thing is to keep the instructions clear, and I still think he accomplished that even by putting this creative spin on it. So, but also do keep an eye out, Mr. AJ. You forgot to add in where to start the mission in your mission objective tab. So make sure you do that, because I had to go back and go in my chat log to figure out where I had to go when I pick this up. Because I always pick it up, log out a game, and then I'll come back and play it later, just to make sure I catch something like that. Because a lot of players do that. Do. Anyway, some Foundry limitations include like NPCs acting like nothing is happening during an attack. So you're at the bar, and everybody's dancing around, having a good time gambling and stuff, and then an attack comes, but everybody's acting like nothing's happening. Now there is ways to easily work around this now with the ability to now make NPCs disappear. So you could have all this. You could have those NPCs disappear now and just add in new ones where they're doing something else now. It's not exactly the same as having an NPC change their animation, but it provides the illusion that they have changed. So, and plus you're on another floor when this whole thing happens, so by the time you get down there you can totally have them just swap out and nobody will know. That's another thing to look at. There's also a little bit debate over the reskinning of ships in this mission. Now, as an author who had to publish a Dominion series with both Cardi ships and Jem'Hadar ships, I look at this probably differently than Wee. But, alright, why don't we just repeat the debate real quick about what we had here. So, basically in the Foundry, people reskin ships, and sometimes that works out better in some cases than others. So, like in mine, I had Jem'Hadar ships in the Gamma Quadrant, making holographic Cardi ships. And that I could see as a Foundry limitation, because that's weird. It pulls you out of the immersion. In this one, you have that as Fed ships, reskinned as Cleon ships, because that's the only way you can have them allied with you. Now, the only thing I really noticed was they were shooting phasers. Now, how do you feel about this, Wee?
I think that it's a limitation nobody can help. But for story purposes, it does give a bit more insight into, like, the thing. The story, essentially, the thing, what I'm saying. But what it means is that you can look at a glance, you have an ally, but it can be like a Klingon Vulture, or a Klingon Bird of Prey, or a Romulan Warbird, something along those lines. If they're shooting phasers, okay, granted, it takes away from the immersion, because there's a limitation. You can't put Klingons or Romulans as allies in the Foundry. It has to be Feds if you're a Fed. It has to be Klingons, Gorn, Nausicaans, all that kind of stuff if you're a KDF. And that kind of thing authors can't help, and both you and me, Murph, both agree on this, and it's something we can't help. It's something that needs to be in but isn't yet, so the way people have worked around it is just simply to reskin it. And granted, it does look a bit weird when we have things like, I don't know, Vultures shooting tachyon detection grids everywhere, because of course the Klingons don't have the technology as far as we know.
Well, they don't use it because
they don't use it, but you get the gist of it. So essentially, it's kind of an if subject, but it's none of the author's fault. I think it's a good idea to reskin the ships, but it's something.
There's no other way to do it, though. That's the problem. So it's not like, I mean, unless you want to explain why they're shooting phasers, but sometimes it's just better to ignore it and just go, whatever, it's a Foundry limitation. But I mean, you could say, oh, we had to refit this ship with phasers or something, but then you have the whole Klingon fleet shooting with phasers. It's just like this weird thing. Honestly, it doesn't bug me that much, like, especially, like, you have ground mobs right now that work when you reskin them, but sometimes you have, like, weird aliens placing down generators that make Cardi troops or Hirogen troops, and that kind of breaks immersion. You really don't get that feel with the reskinning he's done here, because they're not, like, spawning stuff that doesn't make sense, like Fakiri demons flying through space. That does not make me happy, authors, when you do that. It doesn't make sense. Don't do that. But anyway, technical scored an 8.64, our 6th rank in technical, so it scores really well in here, too. That makes me curious, Game Master Wee, what did it score in gameplay? But first, actually, maybe you should tell us what's going on. Then read your score.
Well, essentially, gameplay overall was actually really, really good. I'll get into more details later, but, well, we'll start with some negative parts first. Let's just get out of the way.
Okay.
Space gameplay, to start with, was pretty average. nothing special besides reach markers and dialogue boxes. It's mainly dictated by the combat. We've seen this from previous missions. Nothing really that new, but it's something that really could be improved. I haven't seen that many authors out there that really do expand on that area. So I think we've only ran into a couple of missions that actually do that.
Yeah.
So in all of our things. Space combat, as mentioned, was very, very engaging. I mean, we mentioned this in the last mission. The last battle there was epic. This is more consistent. This basically does it every single time you have a combat in space. There are multi-sat groups in pretty much every encounter, which makes it tough for gameplay. The groups are also quite tough on their own as well, if you observe the enemy. Now, you've got a bit of allies to assist you in most cases, which is a story element inclusion here. Again, fed groups reskinned as other allied mobs and that kind of stuff. It's that kind of thing we've mentioned, we've discussed already. But essentially, big battles present throughout the mission makes the combat on this side of the gameplay aspect feel great for the player. I'm sure both of us agree that this was one of the better areas of this mission.
Yeah, it was really fun. Good. I found it quite engaging. I was really getting into the space combat.
Yeah, there is a bit of ground gameplay, unlike space gameplay, was very engaging and immersive. This primarily dictates from the fact that you can talk to more optional NPCs and interactable objects there. And there are plenty of that, especially in the bar area we've mentioned.
Oh, and the side quests.
Yeah, there are actually mini side quests that I discovered as well, a couple of them as well. One of them is like, you have to make sure these Klingons aren't harassing these people. And another one is to try and help the chef that's in the area as well. They're entirely optional, but it's just that little extra thing that gives the captain a choice. It's like, maybe I should help these people or not, or if you're a sarcastic captain who doesn't care about anyone.
Oh, go crap.
Yeah, don't bother. It allows the player to experience a story whilst making them feel like they are in charge, essentially. That's what it is. And overall, movement throughout the mission, as in like progression, it felt progressive. There wasn't too much running around without doing anything. There wasn't too much actions in areas. It was all progressive enough in one single area. There wasn't like huge areas of nothing where there was nothing to do. There is a bit of ground combat, and it is also very engaging. That's 3 on a dot. 3 on a dot.
Nice.
Good so far. Space combat, like space combat, ground combat has a lot of multi-stat groups for interesting gameplay half the time. So he's repeated that in ground and space. Excellent idea, and very well thumbs up there, at least from me. Again, allies to assist to make it easier, but believable for the story. Because if you follow the story, in some of those cases, it makes it much more immersive. And what that essentially is that you have, I think I mentioned this a couple of times earlier, you have some of your Klingon allies on one of the ground maps following you, but because the patrols only work like in a rotation, and they don't have like a movement in a specific direction throughout the map, what he's done is he's removed the group, and then he's spawned in a different place where you're having combat. That's a workaround for Foundry Limitations.
Yeah.
Repeated this a couple of times. That's the kind of thing that we need to see more of, especially now that that feature's there. So again, make direct directive, guys, because it's a great idea. More into ground, I felt like it was more emphasized in this mission because there was a puzzle here, whereas space there wasn't. And the puzzle in here was much more interesting. I'm sure we both agree on that.
I liked that puzzle.
Much more integrating and interesting in this mission than part 1. I mean, alright, we were all awfully critical of the one from part 1, but this one
involves complex.
Transport code. Yeah, it involves rewriting a transport code. It's overly complex, so engineers should find this easier if you actually know anything about technology that way of the future.
I don't.
Hopefully you do, because that means you can advance that technology. Anyway. It's much more integrated. There are many more choices. There are things that stop you in your path if you make a wrong decision, but it is much more immersive than we saw the one from part 1. So it's a thumbs up from me right there.
I really liked it. I mean, I when we say complex, it's not like a difficult puzzle at all. In fact, it's quite easy. It's just like the way it's set up, it's not simple at all. It's like you got multiple tabs. You have to go into this tab to do this part of the puzzle and then go to this tab. But it's not like confusing. You'll easily get how all that works. It's just nice to see something like this set up, because it's not just like in the first mission, it was just click these 4 buttons in a row in a certain order. This time it's like, okay, you have to go in here, then you have to go into here, okay, then you have to click these in a certain order, okay, then you got to go back to this tab, activate this, but it's not confusing. It's really simple to get.
There is quite a bit of replayability in this mission. Whilst it isn't so much as an alternate ending as such, because the author actually intends for part 3 of the series, so it doesn't really make that sense.
Yeah.
That much sense. There are multiple dialogue options for the player to choose throughout the mission. Now, this links in with what Murphy said earlier about the dialogue. These multipath things are not limited to simple captain choices, where the NPCs simply say the same thing over and over again. The NPC characters respond differently based on what you have said, responding to them. So, for example, you could be sarcastic, and the NPC character in turn could also be sarcastic. But if you're straightforward, like a straightforward Starfleet officer, then they could also be rather straightforward and they trust you more, for example. Remaining consistent throughout the mission does give it that feel for the captain to play the character in a certain way. So you could either be sarcastic like Murphy was, I think, or be a straightforward Starfleet officer like I was. So that kind of a thing would essentially enhance your experience of the story overall, and it's something really, really well done in this mission, I have to say. Plenty of options throughout the mission for the player to choose and determine what type of character the captain player is. Get my words right, come on. Whether he's a crazy British guy or an awesome cheese, fries and bacon pizza eating guy.
I didn't think you'd catch that. Well, oh, hi. Anyway, yeah, you know what? I really enjoyed the gameplay part, like where you could split off and go in a different order and talk to like some of these NPCs to figure out where your contact is and stuff like that. Ha! I got you with that.
I will get my revenge on you at some point.
Okay, for those of you who haven't been watching us since Stoked, we used to do a joke of the week at the end of our review. Now we just turn the whole podcast into a joke, but a good joke, not like, oh my god, the podcast is a joke. Anyway, but there was a joke where I would read through like the script we have here, and then I'd pretend there was somebody threw something in. Oh crap, I got them. So I got you back, wee wee. Anyway.
Revenge is called. Anyway, gameplay scored an 8.6, which put it in second place for gameplay.
Wow, pretty good. So
it's actually not too hard to believe because it's amazingly consistent how good the gameplay is here. Plenty of options, plenty of ground combat and space combat, and saying that as well. Very, very good.
So if you're somebody who just wants to play a mission for gameplay, this is the mission for you. Now, if you like reading the story as well, you could get into some trouble where it's a lot of dialogue, but for people who just want to shoot stuff, of course, F button, you're used to it, just press through it. But really, it's a good story. I don't see why you'd want to press through it. I love it. Overall, Wee Wee, what do we say? What's going on?
Across the board, this mission stands up quite well in all categories. It's no surprise to see why this mission is one of the top missions out there in the top rated list and in our score sheet as well. A lot of great work has been put into making this mission, which, in our both opinions, rivals many cryptic missions. Very, very good. I could absolutely see this as a progression, actual mission in Satacon 9.
I could.
Should that ever feature in the game.
Yeah, overall, it's scored an 8.57. Second place. Really good.
We no longer have the top 3 missions by the same author anymore. Sorry, Alamac.
Sorry, Alamac, but I'm happy to finally see another author get up here. This is awesome. It's first.
It beat Ramak Nor by .01.
Did it? I didn't know it was 0-1. Nice.
Which in turn I think beat Paul Marie by .01 as well. We have a very close second, third, fourth. So it's not tie, which is
almost a tie. Why don't you listen to me next time and get me a tie? We need some more ties. Come on. We don't want you surpassing other people. We want you being just as good. Come on. We want ties.
Don't you find it ironic that we've had 5 weeks in a row we've had ties, and now the 2 missions by AJ have not tied with anything?
I wonder if we switch authors next week, if we'll have a tie. That'll be interesting to see. Because, of course, Part 3 isn't up yet, so go play these 2 parts so he'll go make Part 3. It's up to you people. But anyway, I think that's it for episode 17. I mean, we got our review done. We got all that done. We almost had a Lockbox podcast, which was ruined. But anyway, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. Also, you can check out, we have our our ranking table, that's what it's called, wee wee, right? Our ranking table available for you to go check out. It has all the missions we reviewed with all their scores posted there, so you'll see them ranked overall from top to bottom, and then you can also check out their story, technical, and gameplay scores. So I think there's about now 29 or 30 missions up there, so you can go check those out if you haven't heard of one, or you haven't played one of those that you see on there, and you see it's ranking pretty good. Go check it out, because there's a lot of great missions out there that we've reviewed in the past. And hey, there's even more out there that we have not checked out yet, but we intend to as we continue our journey on Foundry Files, as we open the file of Foundry. We'll see you next week. Bye. Wave bye, wee wee. Alright.
My camera's shifting before we start.
Oh man. Dude, way to break it.
It's the camera's fault. It's always been that. It's always been the camera's fault.
Yeah, blame the camera. Camera freezes on me and then I get frozen. It's not the wee virus.
What, you expect me to freeze instead? It's the camera.
Oh, yeah, blame
I'll just go randomly one day and go.
My camera's nice. I love you, camera. You don't screw up. No, you have to go off camera so that people don't see you as I intro the show, because you would never let me intro a Lockbox podcast. You stand up and then walk off the camera.
What?
You have to stand up and walk into camera shot, the one you have set up, and then you're going to sit down and tell me to stop what I'm doing, because it's wrong. There should not be a Lockbox podcast. I'll give you like a thumbs up when I'm introing, so come in like 10 seconds later.
Yeah, but I can't see your camera, dude.
Why can't you? Oh, right. Damn it. Keep your headset on. I forgot I don't send. He's fixing his camera, everybody. Don't worry about it.
No, don't you dare slip.
That's what she said. Got that already. Alright, here we go. News. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay.
That's it, I quit. I'm not working with this guy anymore. I'm getting, I'll get Spud. Me and Spud will host the Canadian Lockbox podcast, where we talk about maple syrup and lockboxes.